Alright, as promised, I'm putting up this video on Chapter 10, Exercise number 2, which is this model here, with the following dimensions. We'll get more into depth into this as we go along. So I'm going to move rather quickly through the basic parts of this, and then I'll slow down and explain some of the other stuff. So let's get started. So we're going to make a new part, and our units are millimeters, grams, seconds. So I'm going to start in the top plane. You can start in any plane you want, but for me, this is the easiest way. And I'm going to make a rectangle, and this is a 75, and this is 100, and I'm going to center my rectangle. You don't have to do this at all, but I just like to. So we're going to go here and here, like so. So now we have our base of the model, and that's 20 millimeters, and we hit OK. So now we've got our base here, 100 by 75 and 20 millimeters tall. So now we're going to create this arced portion right here, oops, right here, and this block here. So I'm going to go into the front plane and go normal 2. Now, looking at the way this radius 50 center line is at 16 millimeters height, and the base of this is 20 millimeters height, this point right here will not coincide directly unless we make a few interpretive adjustments. So we're going to do that, and I'll explain it as I go along. So the biggest key I want to do is make sure that I have a 15 width on my profile here and a 15 width on my block here. This radius 50 center line is a great guide, a great starting point, but I'm going to adjust slightly off that. So let's go into our sketch, and we're going to do a center point arc here, and I'm going to start somewhere over here and go up like so. All right, so now I'm going to smart dimension this, and like it says, a 50 here. I'm going to make this for construction here, and I'm going to smart dimension off this end, and I'll put it at 42.5, and I'll smart dimension off this, and I'll put it to 16, right? So this is our center point. So what I'm going to do is now draw another center point arc off of this center point here, and I'm just going to connect it to the end of this. If I go horizontal, I can get a 42.5 radius, which would be technically correct, but you can see that it won't line up directly right at the corner. So what I'm going to do is make an interpretive and executive decision to line it up right at the corner here. All right, now I'm going to go all the way up, and we'll go up till it's vertical here. Now, I'm going to use the offset entities, and I'm going to click on this guy, and I'm going to reverse the direction and set it to 15 millimeters, and then hit OK. What I'm going to do after that is extend this entity down to here, but if you see, I can't do that right here. So what I'm going to do is draw a construction line or a center line right off the end of this, and just draw it out to here. Right? Now I can extend this entity quite nicely. All right? And as far as the rest of this goes, we can draw our sketch of the block up here and make it 15 millimeters. But when we get into the lofts, it kind of confuses. So I'm actually going to make a separate sketch for that. So I'm going to exit the sketch, and I'm going to make another sketch. And I'm going to do it off the front plane here. And I'm going to make a rectangle, and I'm going to draw it right off this and out to here. Okay? And I'll smart dimension that to 15, and smart dimension that to 45, 45, 45, right here. And if we look at the dimensions, it's 45 here and 15 here. Now, like I said, I made sure that this dimension was 15, and it goes up to about a 90 degree, or to an exactly a 90 degree arc, and it's vertical right here. Okay, so that's my justification for doing this. If you choose to do it a different way, that's fine by all means, and you won't lose points or anything like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit the sketch, and I'm going to go to features, and just to show you guys, I'm going to extrude emboss and base, and I'm going to click on my sketch 3 here, and now I'm going to go to mid plane, and set this to 50 millimeters, right? And looking at this, it's 50 millimeters here off the mid plane, which is what we need. So now we're done here. Now, the next part that I'm going to do is the loft, right? So I can actually go in and edit this sketch, and I can take out this construction line if I need to, and I can actually take this one out if I want to. And it has dimensions and all that stuff. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to leave it in just for visualization. But the reason I made a separate sketch for this one is because when we do a lofted base, a boss and base, you need a profile sketch. And if I added sketch 3, which is this block for this guy, onto my sketch 2, it tends to confuse the loft, or it has in the 18 times that I've tried to do this. So what I'm going to do is make another sketch. I'm going to start here. Now it says select plane or planar freeze. So I'm going to select the top of this. I'm going to go off this corner, and I'm just going to go over to here. And I'll smart dimension this to 15 millimeters, like so, right? And now I can make another, so I'll exit this sketch, right? Now, going back and looking at this, I'm going to make another sketch on this face right here, but I need to know the correct dimensions of it. And when I look at this, in this particular area right here, I know that the width between the circles, or the center of these radii here, is 35, and I know it's 2 by radius 5. So this is what I read it as is 2 radius 5 fillets, right, with a 35 width between the centers. So if you take 5 off of this side and 5 off this side, that's a 25 width between the solid parts of the model. All right, and looking at the profile view, you see that it goes up and it's 15 kind of depth here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a square on the edge of this face right here, and I'm going to start on there and go to this side. Okay, now I'm going to right click and go normal to the right plane. Now I'm on the back side, so I'll hit normal 2 again, and I'll flip it around. So now I'm looking at the directly head on to this. So if I smart dimension this, I want it to be 25 millimeters like this, but now it's off center. So I know that the total width is 50, and 50 minus 25 is 25, and 25 divided by 2 is 12 and a half. So I have multiple ways of doing this. I can use midpoint relations, adding relations between the midpoint of this and the coincident of this, or what I'm just going to do is smart dimension this line from this line and put it at 12 and a half. 2 different ways of doing the exact same thing. Okay, so now I'm going to exit that sketch. So looking at my model, I have a couple sketches that aren't doing anything. Sketches 2, 4, and 5. 2 is those, 4 is that one, and 5 is that one. All right, so I'm going to go up to my features, lofted boss and base. Now my profile sketches. I'm going to expand this tree out, and I'm going to say that my sketch 4 here and my sketch 5 here are my profiles, right? Now I can drag these green corners around, and it'll give me kind of a starting how I want to look at my loft, right? So what I want is when I look at it head on, I want it to follow these curves, these guide curves. So what I'm going to do is select the guide curves here, and I'm going to select sketch number 2. Right? Now it comes up with this menu here, and I've got open loops. So I'm going to select 1, and I can click on the green arrow, and it starts with that. But now if I look here, this one doesn't match up with this line. So I'm going to select this guide curve as well, and hit the green arrow, and it should have 2 open loops in my guide curve. Now, if I had continued the sketch previously that I used to make this block up here, which in this case is sketch number 3 here, I've had trouble with it, and it confuses my model. So I'm just kind of simplifying the process. And this is the way my loft should work. Okay, and we can mess with the settings, but I don't think it needs to. So I'm just going to hit OK, like so. And now if I look at it head on right here, I can actually bring up this sketch. Oops, I can highlight one of these sketches like so, and it looks kind of like what we want on this, right? almost exactly. Granted, there are some differences here, but that's up to interpretation to you and me. And since this is the easiest and simplest way to do it, I'm considering this the most efficient and most correct. If you need these parts to fit specifically, we can, like, let me back that statement up. If you needed an exact certain kind of a loft, there are other ways to create more exact lofts. Um, but in my opinion, if you're going to machine this part, you're not trying to necessarily make this loft the most picture perfect thing there is. And if I look at it from the side view here, it looks pretty similar, right? Especially if I turn on just hidden frame, or what is this? Just hidden lines removed, right? Now if I look at it from the top, which is Control 5, it looks very similar to what we have here, right? So I'll turn the shading with edges back on here. Now, the reason I chose to do it this way is because it makes these curves right in here super easy to do. So all I do is go up here and hit my fillet button, and it says items to fillet, and I want the radius to be 5 because that's what it says in the dimensions, and I select my items to fillet, and I select this edge, and I get a preview, and then I go over and zoom in on accident, and I select this edge, and I get a preview, and then I hit OK. And that looks pretty good. Yeah? So that's the down and dirty way to create this loft part here. I'll make a second video here shortly and finish out the rest of the model, especially this rib piece up the top.